Hello everyone, this is Jonathan Little for PokerNews.com, and today we're going to look at a spot where we have Ace-King under the gun, and I'm going to open it up for 1,100 at 250, 500 with a 75 ante. As stacks start to get somewhat short as they are here, I'm fine raising it up to close to the minimum. You could also raise it a little bit bigger if you feel like it, depending on what you would like your opponents to do. And, with Ace-King, maybe you don't really mind making a little bit bigger, because if you raise and induce your opponents to 3-bet, that's not so bad, because then you can go all in, right? That said, I'm typically just going to make it roughly the same size from early position, just because my range should be pretty strong to begin with. We did see in the previous hand for Poker News, I raised with Ace-10 in second position, so maybe the range is not super premium, but certainly it's strong enough. And like I mentioned, Ace-10 is starting to even become a fold for me from early position with shallow stacks. So I raised to 1,100. Player in second position calls, button calls, small blind calls, and now a tight aggressive kid goes all in for about 14,000 in the big blind. And this is a scenario where I think a lot of people will just call with most of their hands, but I actually don't hate going all in with anything reasonable, especially if you think the initial raiser, Jay Cardshark, is going to fold a lot of the time. Let's pull up the calculator real quick and take a look at what exactly is going to happen most of the time. So usually, me and the tight aggressive kid are going to get it all in. So when that happens, we're going to have 14,000 in each, so that's 28,000, plus the additional money in the pot. So we have 750 from the antes, let's call it 600 from the antes. Then we have 1,100, 1,100, 1,100, so that's 3,300 plus 600, so 3,700, right? And our opponent has to put in 14,000 to win, let's call it 31,700, so 14 divided by 31,700 equals. So he needs to win about 44% of the time when he gets called. So imagine he steals the pot pre-flop half the time, right? Maybe that's the case, maybe it's not. But that means he's just going to win this 1,100, 1,100, 1,100, 1,100, and the 600, so about 5,000 chips half the time. And then the other half the time, he's going to get it all in with maybe, 40% equity or 42% equity, slightly behind what it appears he needs. That's actually going to be a decently profitable spot for him because he is getting us to fold much too often. Now, it's not quite as easy as that, because certainly if I fold, someone yet to act may call a decent amount of the time. Like maybe the player in second position decided to play a little bit cautiously with a hand like pocket tens. Or maybe the player on the button or the small blind looks at their pot odds and say, well, I guess I'll gamble with you with the ace jack offsuit. Who knows? But this is a spot where, especially if the initial raiser is opening wide, or at least wider than they should, and will also not defend that raise often enough, squeezing becomes at least a reasonable idea. Now, it becomes even better if the initial raiser is raising from later position. Here, he's against an under-the-gun raiser, and I can tell you my range is at least somewhat near reasonable. So I'm going to be defending this often enough to where our opponent can't just shove all sorts of garbage. So maybe this is not the best time for this play. I mean, I don't even know what my opponent has. Maybe he has aces, in which case it's clearly fine. But if he's trying to get folds, I don't know if I'm the best person to go for it against. You'd much prefer to go against players who are opening way more than their fair share. Anyway, I'm not going to fold this. I'm going to get it in. That is another thing that we should definitely make clear. With the ace-king suited, I'm not folding to this roughly 30 big blind jam. I understand 30 big blinds or 28 big blinds is a lot, but our hand's pretty good, and you will find that there are certainly a lot of players who will shove in this scenario from the big blind with, a lot of random ace-x suiteds, a lot of pairs. And what it amounts to is if your opponent's ever shoving with ace-queen or with a lot of pairs, like 8, 7, 6s, 5s, or with a hand like king-queen, or even some bluffs like 9-8 suited, then you just have to call it off with ace-king. You're going to be in fine enough shape most of the time. So I do hop in. I'm definitely not folding. Someone yet to act again. They could have jacks, but even if they have jacks or tens, they may still fold. And they probably should once it goes 28 big blinds all in and a call. And it turns out we're against king-queen offsuit. So You want to ask here, is there a better option for king-queen than just jamming? If the king-queen could call pre-flop and then play reasonably well, I don't hate the call. I think it's perfectly fine. Given he only had 28 big blinds to start with, he can't really make it something like 9 big blinds and then fold to a shove. So for that reason, if he is going to play it, he does need to shove. If he is going to re-raise with it, he needs to shove. But I think in this spot, I would have just preferred a call. Maybe he decided to use this hand as a bluff to some extent because he has 2 decent blockers. The king and queen are pretty great blockers. So that's certainly a reasonable idea. But I think I probably would just call against my preflop raise, knowing that I am raising strongly from early position. But if he thinks I'm raising all sorts of garbage, maybe because I'm a young professional player and he thinks I'm just opening a lot of garbage because I don't know what I'm doing or who knows what, then sure, shove, because you're going to get a lot of folds and that's going to work out pretty well for you. So that's going to be it for today. Thank you very much for watching this hand. Don't fold your ace kings to 30 big blind all ins. And I'll talk to you next week.